Good evening. Thank you for coming out to this month's meeting. I think the first of the new year. Jon Rawl is my name, and it is always a great thing to be in this neat community, a great suburb of Melissa's. Got you on that one, huh? And thank y'all for providing this when I get a little throat needs clearing. You provided me with a nice thing of water. I appreciate that. So quickly before I go into it, I better stay in frame here. Before I go into talking about Salem Cemetery, me, I've lived in Jackson for 5 years. I'm a native of South Carolina and have been a big fan of history my whole life. Just had a passion mostly for military history. That's why I went to college at the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina in Charleston. And of course, Charleston's where the war between the states started, and that's where my love of Civil War history started as a little boy going to visit Fort Sumter. After finishing college, moved to Nashville because I also like music, and I worked in Nashville for many years. And then ultimately moved to the community of Oxford, Mississippi, where I went to graduate school at Ole Miss and got a master's in journalism. And after many years of having a magazine called Y'all and a website called y'all.com, which I still have, and working in media, ultimately I moved here in 2018 because it's a compromise between Oxford and Nashville. A place I love is Jackson, Tennessee, or Bemis. And I've got a young son that still lives in Oxford, so I'm 2 hours away from him, and I go see him pretty much every week. But I've lived here for 5 years, and along the way, some of you may have heard me or heard my name. I work for News Talk 101 and have had a show called the Y'all Show, strange, and really my passion is not just history, but the South and promoting this part of the world. But a few years ago, I was lucky in my job, living and working in Jackson, to have run across Dr. Charles Cox, a retired ear, nose, and throat doctor and a wonderful man. And for a long time, Dr. Cox, along with a gentleman that's passed away, Malcolm Will Cox, I guess if you got the last name Cox or Wilcox, you're a pretty good person. But Dr. Cox had his long-time passion for Salem Cemetery and promoting Civil War history around here, and I got to know him, and ultimately I was selected to be the executive director of the Friends of Salem Cemetery Historic Site, which is a new organization, and I'll tell you about what we're working on specifically with the organization before I fill you in a little bit more first on Salem Cemetery. It is the second oldest cemetery in Madison County. Now, I'm probably going to embarrass some of you, hopefully not you since you live out there, but I have run into so many people after living here for 5 years who've never heard of Salem Cemetery or have never even been out there. So if you don't mind, how many of you know where Salem Cemetery is and have been there? So we got some people that don't know where it is. Cotton Grove Road, have y'all ever heard of that one? You know where the Coca-Cola plant is. What is the golf course out there? There's a Bent Tree, yeah, Bent Tree. I haven't played it, need to. It's out there on the northeastern corner of Jackson is where this is located. And Cotton Grove is a historic community, and if you come down that very narrow road, crooked road, in some places, you'll come across Salem Cemetery. And that cemetery was created well before the war between the states. It was a Methodist campground, essentially, was what it was. And originally, if you have a brochure here, you'll see that Dr. Butler was one of the first, if not the first, landowner when this area was opened up in the 1820s. He was a Tennessee volunteer, having served with Andrew Jackson, and he had that land. But he's not buried there. This cemetery ended up having people being buried there because of its location. And one of the most famous, or I would say the most famous person actually buried there, your picture of your brochure has it, is the peg-leg politician. There would be no Texas if not for Adam Huntsman, if not for Jackson, Tennessee. as he ran off a guy named Dave Crockett out to that part of the world to do their thing. But Adam Huntsman's buried at Salem Cemetery, and we're very proud of that fact. So you have this cemetery on Cotton Grove Road in that historic community of Madison County. And time goes on, the county, the city of Jackson's up and going, everything's going well in the 1830s and 40s. Oh, the 1850s come around, this land that was once part of the Chickasaw opened up for development. And then we had something called the Civil War. And in 1861, Tennessee joins the fight, and there were battles, of course, in Tennessee, but 1862 was when the Battle of Jackson happened. On December 19, 1862, by that time, the Union forces had already occupied Jackson. Ultimately, Ulysses S. Grant's troops were both here and in Corinth as they sort of took control of this area. Well, that didn't sit well with the Confederate forces and the Confederate leadership, so they decided to do something about it. So in December 1862, the Wizard of the Saddle, Nathan Bedford Forrest, who I actually did a documentary on in 2002 that was in several film festivals. It's actually how I got to meet Charles Cox, because he had heard about my documentary and knew about my passion for Civil War. You can find that for free on YouTube. It's called Rebel Forrest. Check it out. It's got Shelby Foote in it, and a bunch of other great characters in that. But General Forrest led the attack, the surprise attack into West Tennessee. And in Clifton, Tennessee, in the midst of winter, he and his roughly 2,000 troops crossed the Tennessee there. Pretty amazing feat. And they did it undetected. They got into West Tennessee by crossing over their horses, their supplies, their men, and they started heading into West Tennessee. They had a battle in Lexington on December 18, 1862, and it was a rout by the Confederate forces. So after defeating the Northern troops on the 18th, they wanted to come toward Jackson. They actually spent the night on Cotton Grove Road. There's a sign as you go down that indicates that. And on the morning of December 19th, 1862 was what we call the Battle of Salem Cemetery, the battle also known as the Battle of Jackson in the official records of the Civil War. And at daylight, the Confederate forces started to move toward Jackson. Now, kudos to the Northern troops, because Colonel Engelmann, who you'll see on the map there, he and his forces had been in Bolivar and were able to come up via rail, and they got off at Royal Street at the depot there and marched out to Salem Cemetery prior to the morning of December 19th. And they got in position without campfires, because it was December. They hunkered down, as you say, and these forces were waiting for the Confederate forces on that 19th at sunrise. So there were about 500 Federal forces and about 500 Confederate forces on horseback, and they clashed at sunrise. A Confederate horse that was white led the way as they came down Cotton Grove Road, and the Northern troops opened up a volley that must have been ferocious. And we don't know exactly how many died, but there were many that died. We know that for sure. One of the neat things about those Confederate forces coming down in that spot, they were under the command of Captain Gurley. Captain Gurley actually has a direct descendant, a great-great-granddaughter, if you will, that is a somewhat famous person around here. Do y'all know who that is? Marilyn Jackson is a direct descendant of Gurley, the Confederate cavalryman from Alabama. That's her ancestor. So those forces were clashing there early on that December 19th morning, and in the end, the Confederate forces were helped out on the cause by artillery to shell the Northern forces. It was a nasty little battle there for a while, but they would turn around and leave. So this was not an attack that kept going on toward the city. This happened only at Salem Cemetery. The reason for that is the great tactician, General Forrest, intentionally only sent about 600 of those 2,000 troops. It was a feint It was a move to keep the Northern forces in and around Jackson because they thought that the cavalry was going to come on into downtown Jackson, which was occupied by the Northern troops. But instead, Forrest, his real objective was just to raise havoc around this part of the world. And at the same time that he was doing the havoc here, and they'd go up to Trenton, they'd go up to the northern portions of Madison County, they tore up railroad tracks, they burnt stuff, they burnt supplies, they caused millions and millions and millions of dollars of damage. At the same exact time, down in Holly Springs, Mississippi, General Earl Van Dorn's troops were raising havoc there and creating tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions in today's terms, of damage to the Northern troops. It really caused a big problem. So much so that the prize that the Northern Army was really looking for was not Jackson, it was not Corinth. They were pushing toward Vicksburg. They wanted to capture the Gibraltar of the Confederacy on the Mississippi River. And that's what this whole push was for, was toward Vicksburg. And this havoc mission, if you will, delayed the Northern troops by probably a year. Well, not a year, maybe a half year, because they ultimately captured Vicksburg on July 4th, 1863, the same day of Gettysburg. So General Forrest, after Salem Cemetery, his troops did go north. They ended up being chased by the Northern troops, and the North thought they had it. And on New Year's Eve, 1863, so December 31st, 1862, a place called Parker's Crossroads happened. And here, Forrest and his cavalry troops were surrounded. And they didn't know what to do, and that's where General Forrest's famous quote, well, attack in all directions. And they did, and ultimately they were able to get out of there and get back across the Tennessee River. And we know that the war carried on for several more years. So that's the battle, that's 1862, and the war goes on in 1863, and the Confederate troops and army never really came back over here and occupied, and it was just a bloody, bloody mess where hundreds of thousands of Americans on both sides ultimately passed away. And I keep using the word ultimately, I better stop saying that. So we have the war's conclusion in 1865. And the cemetery and Jackson essentially had to get through the days of Reconstruction, and they did. So not a lot has happened out there since that day in 1862. We've had burials. There were burials in that Salem Cemetery all the way up until the 1960s. I think it's an integrated cemetery. I think it's black and white. There's actually a black church right next to this site that we've talked to, and they're excited about what we're trying to do here. But the great thing about representing a historic site is, again, because Cotton Grove Road and that corner of Jackson hasn't had tremendous growth in suburbs and tall buildings built. It's kind of the same road as it was in Civil War time period. So this is a site that a lot of people know, but not everybody knows, as evidenced by this poll we just had. And we decided, as a Friends of Salem Cemetery Historic Site, to try to do something about it. Now, thankfully, a group called the American Battlefield Trust, they buy land all over the country. They buy endangered land, and they have a very large treasure chest to go out and buy land. They bought this land here on Cotton Grove Road, 124 and a half acres. They bought that to accompany the half acre that was already there that's technically owned by the county, and that's just where the cemetery is. So we're talking about, if you look at the map on the north side of Cotton Grove Road, in that yellow area is the land that was purchased by the American Battlefield Trust. That's not the entire battlefield. The other side of the road is another landowner, but this is on that north side in the yellow area that was purchased by ABT. ABT, American Battlefield Trust, is in the process of transferring that land to the state of Tennessee. And the state of Tennessee hopefully will take ownership of that within the next 6 months. When that happens, the state of Tennessee is looking for a partner. That's where Friends of Salem Cemetery Historic Site comes in. We are obviously nonprofit, but we're also essentially a group of volunteers. I am a paid professional, but our board is volunteers, and we are welcoming all people interested in this research and more to augment what will hopefully be a county park. So for more than a year, the Madison County Commission and its subcommittees has been looking at this as a possible partnership. And the partnership would be between the state of Tennessee and them, and then we also would be a partner as we would augment. We won't own the land. The land would continue to be owned by the state of Tennessee, but the county its role would be to help take care of security, help with insurance, and promote it. And essentially this would be a 125-acre gift to Madison County that they wouldn't have to pay for, but they get to have it as a park, assuming that everybody's happy and it's a nice relationship. This has been going on for more than a year. And right now we're kind of at a standstill with the county because the county is waiting for that ownership from the American Battlefield Trust to go through officially to the state. And then when it's only the state involved, then the county's willing to play ball then. Again, I think it'll be 5 or 6 months from now when that's official. And then when that does happen, Friends of Salem Cemetery Historic Site, which I represent, its role would be to go out and get grants to make this as cool of a place as you can. Our shining star on the hill is only 20 miles away, and that's Parker's Crossroads. If you've not been to Parker's Crossroads, please go out there and check it out. It's a beautiful site right on Interstate 40, and it's, like I said, 20 miles away. And what they've done out there, Steve McDaniel, longtime state, representative from Henderson County, this has been his sort of vision. And he and others have helped make that a real gem. So much so that Parker's Crossroads now is recognized by the National Park Service. And they have a visitor center, and they're tied in with the NPS. And they're all in favor of what we're doing here at Salem Cemetery. So much so that he's essentially given me all his cliff notes. And he's trying to help us cut out about 20 years that they've had to. Sorry about that, we've got a wasp line. But they worked hard over there for a long time, and a lot of their founding documents and stuff they've done research-wise, they've shared with us, because they want us to succeed too and not have to spend another 20 years if we can possibly pull off. I might not be here in 20 years. But yeah, that's where we stand. Hopefully that'll happen later. And we will be officially a county park in Madison County. The interesting thing, one reason this has taken a little longer is Madison County, we like Madison County, but Madison County doesn't have a lot of parks. Their parks are ball fields. So that's why this has been a little bit of a weird thing for them to try to do this. But I think it's going to happen. Again, it won't cost them any really big time money. They don't have to buy 125 acres of land. We're just got to do the political thing. But when that happens, we will be able to put in walking trails. We will be able to have an interpretive center with enough grant writing and such. That's my main job when all that happens. And we'll just have a great asset to help promote the Civil War and other history here in Madison County. And our site here, coupled with Britton Lane, which is another great attraction in Madison County, is going to be something that will help drive tourists, because Civil War tourism is a very big driver of the economy. And we can be a hub of Civil War and historic tourism right here in Jackson, because Shiloh is awesome and Parker's Crossroad is awesome, but there aren't a lot of lodging options in either one of those two places. And we, Jackson, have, or I should say Bemis, we have lots of hotels and restaurants and museums to come to whenever you come here for a couple of days of learning about Civil War history. So that's where we stand. Our website is salemcemetery.org, and check it out. We are excited to be doing this, but we're going to be more excited when we get the green light and have an official park. And if you happen to know any of your county commissioners, Maybe if you like history, you could say a good word about what we're trying to pull off here. I think we'll be fine, but you never know in politics. So we're really excited, and I can't thank you all enough for letting me come here and talk about it. You know, it's Fat Tuesday, so I appreciate it. I didn't bring any beads, so none of y'all have to take your clothes off. But thank y'all for letting me come, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Yes, sir.
What kind of agreement does the ABT have with the state of Tennessee? I mean, is there something already in place that says in order for this transfer from the American Battlefield Trust to the state of Tennessee, it has to be used for X purpose? I just don't like seeing things get hung out on wink and nod agreements.
Well, one thing I didn't mention earlier is the American Battlefield Trust has a history of working with the state of Tennessee. We actually have in Tennessee a governmental agency called the Tennessee Wars Commission. And underneath the Wars Commission is a lady named Nina Skull, and she is really our contact. And she's worked closely with Parker's Crossroads through the year. There is also I guess it would be War of 1812 site in Fayetteville, Tennessee, or as they say, Fayetteville, down in Lincoln County, in Middle Tennessee. They have that going as well. But American Battlefield Trust is really already turning the wheels. They've done surveys. And it's just a legal thing that this will be transferred over to the state. And when that happens, the state will own the land. And we hope we can have the county agree to be the partner. Because if not, it's just going to sit there. The whole purpose of the American Battlefield Trust buying all this land around the country is to protect it. And they've got lots and lots of places around the country, not just Civil War sites, but they've gone in and purchased to preserve, because they have a lot of people donate their wills and trust and more go to that. So they have deep pockets. So we're happy for that, but we want to make this not just a place that's a land. We want it to be dynamic and have people go out and enjoy and learn about Civil War and American history.
As a follow-up to that, is that what Parks Crossroads did? Did they partner with Henderson County, or is it run by that Parks Crossroads Association, and then I wasn't aware of the relationship inside Henderson County. I know that they did end up partnering with the Park Service and became a satellite operation off the
Similar to what we're trying to do here with Madison County, for as far as I know, still this exists. Their local partner is the city of Parker's Crossroads, who for many years was Steve McDaniel was the mayor. So it kind of works out pretty nice. We actually first approached the city, I don't mind telling you, we first tried to get the city of Jackson to work with us on this whole idea. And honestly, the city's got a lot more resources. They do a great job with their parks. And it would have been nice to have them, but I don't know what happened. This land of ours, if you look at the map, our site touches city property, but it's actually not in the city of Jackson limits. So they would have to annex it if they were to do it. That may still happen, I don't know, but right now the county's got its shot. But yeah, Jackson, to its credit, the city's got some very nice parks, so we're very fortunate for that. But yeah, we're hoping that the county will green light this and we'll be off and going. But Parker's Crossroads has that connection with the Parker's Crossroads, which is kind of odd. Their city is the battlefield, so they have a very vested interest in it over there in Parker's Crossroads. And again, if you have not been, please take 30 minutes sometime. Go over there, check it out. They got a great visitor center, cannons everywhere. They got several miles of a beautiful paved paths through the woods. It is really neat. I don't know, people go there and exercise. It's right on Interstate 40. So if you ever have to go to Nashville, it's a great little pit stop. Great restaurant right down the road too. What is it, Glenda's or Brenda's? I never can remember. But anyway, good food. Good little outing sometime. And the Veteran Cemetery was actually, because they had the Civil War site there, that's what helped draw the West Tennessee State Veteran Cemetery, right there at Parker's Crossroads, or Wildersville, they go by both. That's the official post office, is Wildersville. Any other questions? Okay. Our Northeast Jacksonian won't make sure y'all know exactly where Salem Cemetery is. Lake Graham, have you ever seen that? Cotton Grove Road. I hadn't seen it until I got involved with this a couple of years ago. Lake Red, pretty nice place. It's along the road there. Really, the property here borders that giant Coca-Cola plant. That's right there behind, what is that, the Kellogg's plant? All of that. Yeah. Yes. Yes. It's a nice property, and we're really looking forward to it. We're going to try to do what you would have found in 1862. We're going to hopefully clear up some of the brush that's out there. It's mostly fields now, but a lot of it's grown up, and have something that people will be proud of. Anything else? Well, thank you again for the opportunity to come speak, and I look forward to seeing you again, and hopefully I'll be re-invited out here, and we can share all kind of nice photos and other great things of what's happening in Salem Cemetery. Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate everybody.
That's a lot of information that, being a former Sons of the Confederate veteran, I had been exposed to it, but you know, you can forget a lot of things when you hear it over a period of years. And I've got, in fact, I still have the untutored genius about Forrest that I haven't read. I've had it for 10 years. I've been too busy, I guess. I don't know, but there's a lot of things to do, and I hadn't even started that book. Anybody have anything else want to tell us?
I want, you mentioned the man that was buried out there. Are there any others? It's not just soldiers, the cemetery, is it?
There actually aren't any soldiers buried in the cemetery.
There's not any?
I guess I failed to mention that. The cemetery was sort of the center point of the battle.
Yeah.
Northern soldiers actually got in between the graves to fire at the Confederate soldiers. There's not any soldiers of either side officially in that cemetery. Now there's speculation that some of the Confederates are buried in the woods and all that, but we've never been able to officially dig up anybody. And if any Northern troops would have been killed, they would probably have been moved to Corinth at the National Cemetery in the months after the war. But all those graves are civilians.
There's some Confederate soldiers buried at Brown's Cemetery, there at Brown's Church. Would they have been from that battle?
Possibly, I don't know what units they would have been from. I don't know, I don't have official, I know those were Alabama troops primarily on that cavalry force coming into Jackson. I don't know if there were West Tennessee, it's right there, because I don't think it exists, the actual roll call of who actually was in the battle. Now there might be of who was in the West Tennessee campaign, but I don't have that information. Oddly enough, just because you asked, there's a Jones family that lived out there, and there is the widow of the Jones who ended up being a Confederate colonel, I think. He's not buried there, his widow is buried there. Is that right? She died before the Civil War, and he ended up moving on to Texas because he had actually been in Texas and helped in the Texas independence movement. And he was a West Point graduate. In fact, his roommate at West Point was a struggling writer named Edgar Allan Poe. And so Jones was his name, and he ended up going to Texas, helping with the Texas independence movement. And then when the war started, he actually came back and helped lead a Tennessee regiment. I believe he even fought at Shiloh. And he survived the war, and then he went back to Texas. I think Seguin, Texas is the town that he was from. But his widow had died here, and so if you have any Jones family, you probably know what I'm talking about. He's not buried there, but his original wife is buried out at Salem Cemetery.
All right. Anybody have anything else? Dismissed.